Hello, everyone. Welcome to English for You. I'm Mike.
And I'm Laura.
And today we are beginning a 2-day article about something that I have never, ever thought about. But now I read it, it's a good question. We're going to be talking about why laundry from the line smells so fresh. Now, I know you guys are sitting there going, wait. Laundry from line? I don't get laundry from line. I get messages and cute little emojis and things like that from line. No, we're not talking about WhatsApp line, that kind of thing. We're talking about the line. The clothes line that you hang your laundry on after it's washed to dry it out. We call that the line. Hang the laundry on the line or get the laundry down off the line. Off the clothesline where you're drying it. So I guess this is kind of the idea that if you're hanging your laundry on the line outside in the sun, it's going to have a special smell to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you hang it on a line in your kitchen, it might smell like garlic or whatever you cook for dinner.
Gross. I would hate
if you hang it, if you're lucky enough to maybe have a backyard or put it out on your balcony in the nice sunny day, and then you take it down, you might notice it has a very fresh, nice smell. And you didn't spray any perfume on it. You didn't use any special product. It's just like the sun and the wind and nature, drying your laundry just makes it smell nice. Why? It's a good question.
Yeah. And I also like the feel of like laundry after it's actually dried like naturally, but not from the dryer. Actually, I like it out from the dryer because it's like warm and not wrinkly. But I kind of feel like it's more bacteria-free when it's out in the sun.
It's cleaner. It might be a little softer coming from the drying machine, but you're right, it feels cleaner when it just comes from outside in the fresh air. It's kind of an interesting thing. And where does that smell come from? Because as I said, you're not using a special spray or something to make it smell like lemons or whatever.
No.
It just sort of has this smell. What's going on? Are there like little elves out there when you're asleep spraying your laundry with a wonderful perfume or something? How does this happen? Let's find out by beginning the article.
Reading.
Why laundry from the line smells so fresh. Perhaps you know the feeling. If you wash your favorite towel and then dry it in the sun, it has a pronounced smell. What causes that smell exactly? According to an urban myth, it comes from burned dust mites. These are very tiny bugs. But is this really true? As the saying goes, you shouldn't believe everything you hear. First, the sun doesn't make the towel hot enough to burn dust mites. At best, it would dry up the water and cause them to die. Actually, burning them would require a much higher temperature. Second, because dust mites are so awfully tiny, even 1 million would only weigh a few milligrams. Frankly, that's not enough to affect the smell. Last, burned dust mites don't smell like this. Have you ever smelled burned protein, like burned meat or eggs? It doesn't smell like the warmth of the sun.
Okay, so we've sort of set the scene. We have an idea of what we're talking about here, but the article begins by giving us a good description. It says, perhaps you know the feeling. If you wash your favorite towel and then dry it in the sun, it has a pronounced smell. Very noticeable smell. That's what pronounced means here. We're not talking about pronouncing your words clearly or something like that. No, that is a word we would use in that case, but here when we use it as an adjective like this, a pronounced smell is noticeable. It's strong. It's definitely not something where someone would be like, oh, no, I didn't notice that. No, you would definitely notice that if you went into the home of someone who smokes cigarettes, even if they're not smoking cigarettes at that time, you might notice it. Or if you go into a home of a person who has lots of dogs or cats, it might not smell really bad, but it would definitely smell different than the home of a person who doesn't have pets or who doesn't smoke or something like that. So it's noticeable. For example, the man had been wounded in a war, and so now he walked with a pronounced limp. You could see that one leg was working differently. You might say, hey, did you fall down? Did you break your leg? And then you found out, oh, he was hurt in a war, but the way he walks, you would definitely notice that.
OK， 今天这一课完全是为我设计的哦，就是我们要来探讨衣服上有太阳的味道，实验带你破解迷思。他就是说 Why laundry from the line smells so fresh？一开始我们的 title 的 line 就有晒衣绳的意思哦，所以不是我们在 line message line 的那个东西哦。那我们一开始课文就说你应该知道那种感觉，就是如果你洗你最喜欢的这个毛巾、浴巾，然后呢把它放在太阳光下晒，它就有一个什么呢 ？A pronounced smell。OK，pronounced， 大家想说，不是发音这个字吗 ？pronounce， 但这里 pronounced 这个形容词就是非常明显的。显著的，所以如果你说，这个人的口音，怎么那么明显，那么重，你就可以说 her accent is very pronounced, or maybe somebody has pronounced opinions or views， 都有非常自己个人的一些很明显的一些想法 ，strong 这样的意思哦。再来，我们有提到 if you wash your favorite towel，OK，if。这里是 if 条件句哦 ，if 是从属连接词，是用来连接主要子句跟从属子句，所以由 if 引导的从属子句是用来表达条件哦，又称作条件子句。那主要的子句就是用来表达结果，就是称为结果子句，所以这样的句型用来表达未来可能会发生的情况，所以就是如果怎么样的话就如何如何，所以通常这个句型的主要的子句可以搭配未来式的助动词will 或者是其他的助动词，像是 can, may, might, must 等等。OK， 我们来举个例子会比较清楚哦。If I miss the bus, I might be late for school. You will definitely be late, OK? 其实他就说，如果我错过公车，我可能就会迟到了。这里的 may 或是 might 也都有可能的意思哦。那注意如果你用 might， 其实它不是过去式，它就是有可能的意思。OK, back to our article. I want to find out what causes that smell exactly. The article says.
We've all probably experienced it at some time. That smell from laundry right off the line, straight out of the sun, and you notice it has this smell. So the article asks the question, what causes that smell exactly? I want to know very precisely with many facts. I want to understand completely why this happens, where that smell is coming from. That's why we use that word exactly. When we're talking about things being exact, they are very precise, very, very accurate. There's no like, I think, I guess, it's sort of like this. No. It's definitely this. It's 100% that. I'm giving you all the facts, all the data, all the information. And when someone says that's exactly what I want, that is, if they did it themselves, they would do it the same way. There's no difference in what you did or what you're saying than what they did or what they're saying or what they want. For example, wow, thank you. This is exactly what I wanted for my birthday. You bought me a blue hat with a pink feather in it that looks like a cowboy hat. I was going to buy the same hat, probably from the same store. It's exactly my taste.
Wow, interesting taste.
It's a beautiful hat. You should see it.
Okay. 好，我们刚刚提到的 exactly 到底究竟为什么会有这个阳光太阳的味道哦 ？Exactly 先来看一下这个副词，就是确切地、精确地像是 It took me exactly 2 hours to finish this project, or they look exactly the same if you're talking about maybe 2 people, celebrity lookalikes.
Like they're looking in a mirror or something like that. All right, so what causes this smell exactly? Well, before we get to the actual facts, before we get to the exactly this part, we're going to look through some of the sort of guesses or things you might have heard before to explain this smell. And then we read, according to an urban myth, it comes from burned dust mites.
I don't want to believe that. That sounds really gross. I mean,
it doesn't make much sense
I know,
if you
it smells
actually
so fresh.
think about it.
And dust mites, they yucky, icky, gross.
Well, sure, and if they were burned by sun, then they probably wouldn't still be around because they would have all been burned up and died off, right? Unless all dust mites are inside, but that doesn't really make sense either. Anyways, but this is an urban myth, so we shouldn't really trust it too much because an urban myth is one of those things that you might read about, but when you actually check it out, you find, no, it's not true, and science says that that's not possible. If you really check it out, if you get the facts and talk to the experts, many urban myths are just that. They're myths. They're stories that people tell, but they're not based on reality.
They actually remind me of chain letters.
Yeah, kind of like chain letters. Yeah, kind of like that.
If you don't finish writing like 50 copies of these in 2 days, you'll die.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And you might say, that's not true. And then someone will say, oh, I heard about a guy in Germany and he didn't send it and he got hit by a bus the next day.
I don't know if this is like an urban myth, but did you know this? That if you point like your finger to the moon, your ear will get cut, like a mini, like a paper cut on the ear.
That's not true.
Okay, 不能指月亮
That's an urban myth or maybe a superstition, but they're
yeah.
kind of similar in some ways.
Urban myth 就是都市传说，也就是未经证实的现代社会的奇闻啊、谣言等等，那通常都不是真的啦。那所以呢，他说根据这个都市传说，那个味道我们闻到的很清香的味道，竟然是来自于burned dust mites。这里的 burned 就是 burned 的过去分词当做形容词用，就是烧焦的、被烧的。Dust mite 就是烧焦的尘螨。I don't believe that.
Yeah, it does sound a little strange. And besides, there are dust mites in lots of other places, and they don't get burned. Anyways, the article explains exactly what dust mites are. These are very tiny bugs. But is this really true, or is it just an urban myth? Well, as we read, as the saying goes, you shouldn't believe everything you hear. Absolutely. Some things might sound interesting, cool, frightening, true even, but just because you hear it, just because someone you trust or somewhere you read it somewhere you trust, it doesn't mean that it's true. That's an old saying, and it's a saying we should never forget, especially these days.
所以这里 as the saying goes 常言道俗话说你不应该相信你听到的每一件事情 That's right. I don't believe you, and I think you only believe what you want to believe.
Well, that's true. And if you only hear something and then right away believe it, you're going to probably head for a certain amount of trouble. So it's definitely good to check out the facts on a lot of these things. And here we do get some of the facts about why it's not possible that it's burned dust mites that make that smell. This is not true. First, it says the sun doesn't make the towel hot enough to burn dust mites. Well, that's a good point. The sun doesn't burn mosquitoes as they fly through the air.
I wish they could burn dust mites, though.
That would be nice, that's not how it works. Because if the sun was burning dust mites, it would be burning a lot of other small living animals. And think about plants and flowers. They would be burned up too as well. Anyway, so it's definitely not the sun.
Okay, 所以首先大家都应该用这个你的 common sense or logic， 就是太阳它不会让这个毛巾就是热到可以燃烧尘螨。对呀，废话。Okay, and what else? What else?
All right, well, then we read, at best, the sun, we're talking about the sun here, right. At best, the sun would dry up the water and cause them to die. So it wouldn't burn the dust mites. It might kill them by drying the towel, drying up the water the dust mites live on, and kill them, but it's not because they're being burned. And this is at best, the most you could hope for, the most help from the sun that you could hope for with your dust mite problem is that it might dry them out, but it won't burn them.
所以 at best 就是至多或是充其量最多啦，它可能会把怎么样 dry up the water， dry up something 就是使干透，可能把这个毛巾的水分干透了，然后可能会这样子让尘螨死掉。 And actually, burning them would require a much higher temperature. That's
of course
what
it
we
would.
need.
You can't cook a chicken by putting it outside on a hot day. So why would you expect to burn a little insect by putting it outside on a hot day? You would need or require a much higher temperature. Now, if you put the dust mites in with your chicken in the oven and cook it at, 200 degrees, yeah, that might do it. But the sun doesn't get that hot, luckily, or we'd all be in trouble. All right, so we had that word to require. That's to need. If you must have something to be successful, if you must have something to do whatever you're trying to do, you need it, you require it. For example, the recipe requires 1 kilogram of butter. I don't think I have that much in the fridge. You don't want to say, well, I've got 600 grams. That should be enough. No, if it requires a kilogram, you need a kilogram.
OK, 所以其实如果你真的要把这个尘螨给烧焦的话呢，它需要一个超级无敌高的温度哦。OK，require 这个字就是需要。OK， 它是个动词哦。Most houseplants require good light and regular watering.
Okay, well, that's actually some really good advice there. And definitely don't put some plants out in the sun. They might get a little bit in trouble. But dust mites, they're pretty tough. Second, it says, because dust mites are so awfully tiny, even a million would only weigh a few milligrams. Yeah, that's another good point. You can't really even see dust mites with your eyes. You would need a special microscope or something. So they're really, really small. They're awfully tiny. So even a million would only weigh a few milligrams. A million dust mites would weigh as much as like a small pinch of salt or something like that. So, of course, if we burned them all up, we wouldn't smell it anyways because they're very, very small. We use that word awfully. Now, we're not talking about something as awful, like that was a really awful dinner that you made, I feel sick. Here we're using it basically by saying really, really or very, very to show you it's at a far end of what you might expect. For example, where are my sunglasses? This early morning sun is awfully bright. Like I have my hand in front of my eyes. It's starting to give me a bit of a headache. It's so bright. It's awfully bright.
Okay, so awfully 就是极其非常怎么样，就是有点夸饰的方式哦。I felt awfully tired after I got back from the hospital, taking care of my dad.
Did.
For a week, okay. 所以 OK， 我们刚刚回到课文就说第二其二哦，就是说这个尘螨它们超级无敌 tiny， 非常非常小。即使是100万只的尘螨，可能只会你知道多重吗 ？Only weigh a few milligrams. Milligram 就是毫克，所以差不多几毫克而已耶。Super
That's
light.
Right. And we should also point out that with this word awfully, in maybe a sort of slightly old-fashioned way, or you might hear it in a movie or in a book, it doesn't always mean something is bad, like an awfully bright sun. You could say, I had an awfully good time at your party, or something like that. It's a little bit of an older way of speaking, I think.
See.
But you might hear it, and it doesn't always mean something bad when we're using it in this kind of way. It can mean just very, very good in some cases. Back to the article. Frankly, it says, that's not enough to affect the smell. All of these mites, they're so tiny, even if you could burn them up in some way. There's so few of them and they're so small, it's not enough to affect the smell. Frankly, we put that at the beginning of the sentence because basically it's kind of saying truthfully, honestly, if we get even more careful and accurate with our facts, that's kind of what we're saying. I had a really good time at your party, an awfully good time. Frankly, it was the best birthday party I've ever been to. So I'm going a little bit further with my statement, a little bit more true, a little bit more powerful, a little bit more accurate. For example, frankly, my dear, I don't really care.
That sounds like, from Gone with the Wind line.
It is kind of like Gone from... Frankly, you're right about that.
Frankly 就是副词嘛，就是坦白说老实说，所以 quite frankly, I was shocked to find out the singers got divorced. 就是说，老实说，我好讶异哦，这一对歌手了，他们竟然离婚了。Okay, and what else?
Well, there's another reason that it's not the dust mites. That's an urban myth. Last, it says burned mites don't smell like this. So if you did actually want to burn a bunch of dust mites and then smell what it smelled like afterwards, it wouldn't smell like a fresh, clean towel. It says, have you ever smelled burned protein, like burned meat? Or eggs? Right, because dust mites are insects. They're little animals. So they might smell like burning a mosquito or burning an ant or burning other types of protein like meat or eggs. None of these things smell like a fresh, clean towel.
OK， 如果我们去闻那种烧焦的肉啦，或者是蛋的话，反正就是 burned protein。protein 是什么呢？蛋白质。然后我们就可能会说，或许它就比较类似像是烧焦的尘螨，但是根本没有嘛，就是太阳晒的这个我们的毛巾闻起来是很 fresh 很香很清新的。
Okay, so most of us, I think, have probably smelled a burning egg or burning meat from a barbecue in our lives at some time. And as the article says, think about that. All right, that smell. It doesn't smell like the warmth of the sun. Yeah, that's true. No one ever walked into a barbecue restaurant and said, it smells like a sunny day in here. No, it smells like cooking meat because that's what it is. It's got a special smell and it doesn't smell like a clean towel. It doesn't smell like the warmth of the sun. And warmth is a word that we use. It's a noun we use to talk about heat. Basically, the heat that we get from warm things, that is warmth. If you're drinking a cup of tea or coffee on a hot day, you might also hold it in your hands to get a bit of warmth from the hot coffee to go into your cold hands. So warmth is basically the heat that is created by making heat. For example, the dog likes to lie by the window in the warmth of the sun.
所以呢，其实他说，拜托，如果是烧焦尘螨的味道，绝对不会闻起来像阳光的这个暖和的味道咯。Warmth， 我们应该知道 warm 就是暖和，后面加 th 就变成名词，就是暖和。OK， 温暖的，像是 the warmth of the summer or the warmth of the sun， 就是夏日的暖和，或是太阳的暖和。Or should I wear a jacket for extra warmth?The aircon is making me feeling so cold.
Well, yes, definitely having a jacket for warmth. If you go to a movie, for example, in the summer, that might be a good idea. All right, so it's not the sun burning the mites. That's what we know about why the towels smell so fresh, but we don't know actually why they do. We know it's not the mites, but what is it? We're going to have to figure all that out tomorrow. But for now, we have a chat question.
You chat.
Okay, so our chat question is kind of about urban myths. We learned that urban myth that your towel smells fresh when it's hanging in the sun because the burning dust mites makes it smell that way. Not true, but something you might have heard, something that's passed around by friends and, in conversations and maybe books and on the internet, but not true. But it's very common for people to hear and maybe even believe this. That's why we call it an urban myth.
Okay, so I am going to ask you for a free chat question. What other urban myths have you heard of?
Gosh, there's so many, and the interesting thing about them is they change, over time.
Do they have those really scary ones?
From the places you go. I got a scary one for you, sure. This is one that I heard many times in many different ways growing up in Canada, and actually when I lived in England, too. Now, remember, Canada, England, they're cold places. We don't have a lot of, scary insects there, like snakes or spiders or, things like that, things you might find in a jungle or something. And so the idea of those things are kind of scary. So here's the urban myth. Someone goes to, think of a warm place, Mexico, Africa, somewhere, kind of exciting and exotic like that. They get bitten by a spider. And then they come home, and then a few days after they get back to, Canada, wherever they are, they notice a bump on their skin. Now, maybe they also went to the suntan place, to use those sun tanning machines, because that might also change the story a little bit, make it even scarier. They go to a doctor. The doctor says, it's probably just something you ate in Mexico or wherever you were. Just ignore it. And then a few days later, the bump bursts open and all these tiny spiders come out.
I don't believe those.
So the spider laid its eggs in your leg or your arm or your back or wherever they find this. And then it bursts open and oh my my God, are all like, this is
really
the worst,
funny,
terrible
bad
thing.
horror movie.
Completely not true. Completely impossible.
You've heard of
That's
this
not how
growing
spiders lay their eggs. But you're right. It's ended up in at least 2 horror movies. They've used that.
Yeah.
So that's how these stories spread. They're scary. They kind of make you believe what you think. Ooh, traveling to hot countries with scary animals is dangerous, So it kind of goes with some things you might believe. It sounds believable. You hear different versions of it. None of it's true. All a myth. So there you go. That's an example of one. I'm sure there are many, many, many more out there. They change over time, and they also change depending on where you are. I'm sure there's Japanese urban myths that we've never heard of, but everyone in Japan's I heard that.
Very interesting.
That's true. So they're very interesting. You can look them up online, and I think you'll find some pretty interesting stories there, most of which not true at all. But what is true is we'll be back tomorrow with more about hanging your laundry in the sun and why it's not dust mites.
I want to find out.
It's something else. We'll find out. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Pronounced. This Japanese dish has a very pronounced taste that some really like and some really hate. Exactly. The cost of the trip will be exactly 3,214 NT dollars. I added it all up on my phone. Require. It requires a lot of skill and years of practice to play the guitar really well. Awfully. It was awfully kind of you to give me this umbrella. Thanks so much. Frankly. Frankly, I don't care if you're tired. You have a lot of work to do, so start moving. Warmth. The weather was cold, but the warmth of the fire kept the people comfortable.
智慧小补帖
Urban myth. Dust mite. Milligram. Protein.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net